This morning at 9:17, a timer began, just 72 hours. That's how much time is left before officials could show up at Trump Tower with legal papers. This isn't a warning anymore. This is happening right now. The authorities are already preparing. If you want to know what happens when decisions finally catch up with someone, hit subscribe now. What takes place in the next 3 days could change everything in America. Let me explain what's going on. Late last night, Friday, January 23rd, 2026, around 11:03, something big happened in Japan's financial markets. They started dropping fast. Then early this morning, just after 2 a.m., a large insurance group in Switzerland sent an urgent message to a court in New York. The message was simple and short: we can't back the Trump bond anymore. By 9:17 this morning, a judge signed papers. The order said, act now, take the assets. The whole thing from Tokyo to New York took only 10 hours, just 10 hours to remove the financial protection that's been shielding Donald Trump for 2 years. And here's what you need to know: that speed is not normal. That speed is not random. That speed looks planned. Let me break down what usually happens compared to what actually happened here. Normally, when an insurance company backs out of a bond, the person involved gets at least 30 days to find another option. That's the standard rule. That's how New York law usually works. But today, Judge Patricia Hernandez, who's been a judge for 20 years and known for following the rules carefully, said no waiting. Her written order says, and I'm quoting exactly, because of worldwide financial problems and the defendant's known money troubles, we must act immediately to protect the value of the assets. Immediate action. No delay, no time to appeal. Just move forward now. So why would a careful judge skip the normal process? Because someone told her that waiting even a few days would let Trump move his money to other countries or change how his companies are set up to avoid paying. And who gave her that information? The Attorney General's office, Letitia James. The same Letitia James who's been holding on to this $464 million judgment since February 2024. For 2 years, she accepted the bond. For 2 years, she let the appeal continue. And then on the exact night that a global money crisis gives a perfect reason, the bond vanishes and she acts within hours. Do you see the pattern here? Let me tell you about this insurance group. The official name is Global Indemnity Reinsurance Partners. It's a team. Swiss Re owns 38%. Munich Re owns 27%. The rest is split among smaller European and Asian companies. These aren't careless businesses. These are companies that insure other insurance companies. They don't panic. They don't rush decisions. But according to the paperwork filed with the court at 2:14 this morning, their risk committee held an emergency meeting at 3:07 a.m. Tokyo time and voted together to pull the Trump bond. 3 in the morning on a Saturday during a market crash. Who calls that meeting? Who has the power to wake up board members across 3 continents and demand a vote right away? I looked at who sits on the board of Global Indemnity Reinsurance Partners. 14 people total. 11 are regular insurance executives, normal backgrounds, but 3 are different. 3 have experience in government finance and policy. One of them, Dr. Catherine Brennan, worked as Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Markets at the United States Treasury from 2013 to 2017. That's during the Obama years. Another board member, Hinrich Volker, used to advise the German finance ministry on debt issues and has known connections to Democratic Party financial groups in the United States. I'm not saying this is a secret plan. I'm saying there are conflicts here that no major news outlet is looking into. And there's one more name involved. I'm going to tell you who in exactly 7 minutes. But first, you need to understand why this timing is so important. Because if I just tell you the name without explaining everything else, you'll miss how significant it is. Stay right here. Subscribe now. When I reveal that name, when I show you the link that connects Tokyo to Zurich to New York, you'll see exactly how this whole situation was put together. This isn't random chaos. This is organized. Let me show you exactly what Letitia James is targeting, because this isn't scattered. This isn't guesswork. This is precise. 5 properties, 5 levels of damage, each one chosen to hurt not just his money, but who he is. And I'm going to explain them in order of emotional impact. first 40 Wall Street, the Trump Building. This is where his story really started. In 1996, Donald Trump bought the ground lease on this 72-story tower in Lower Manhattan for what everyone in New York real estate called an amazing deal. He's promoted it for 30 years as proof he's brilliant, his pride and joy. But here's what most people don't know. Trump doesn't actually own the land under that building. He owns a lease that ends in 2076. And under New York law, when someone with a lease doesn't pay a big court judgment, that lease can be canceled or sold to cover the debt. The building was valued at maybe $200 million in 2023. But in a forced sale, in a struggling commercial real estate market with interest rates going up because of the Japan crisis, buyer groups will offer $30 million, maybe $40. Trump loses the building and the sale doesn't even cover half what he owes. He loses his first big trophy and still owes the state $300 million. Second, Trump Tower retail and business space, not the penthouse yet. The bottom 15 floors, the lobby with the gold escalators, the Gucci store, the office areas, all of that brings in about $20 million a year in rent. Here's what happens. The court appoints someone called a receiver. That's a lawyer chosen by the judge who walks into Trump Tower on Monday morning with a court order and takes over running things. The receiver has legal power to fire anyone working for the Trump organization. Eric Trump, Don Jr., they come to work and security walks them out. The receiver then sends letters to every tenant in the building. Don't pay Trump. Pay the New York State Supreme Court. Every rent payment, every lease check goes straight to Letitia James. Trump still owns the building on paper, but he loses control. He loses the money coming in. He becomes a watcher in his own empire. Third, Seven Springs. This is the Westchester property that was central to the fraud trial. Trump said it was worth $291 million when he used it to get loans. Independent experts said it was worth maybe $56 million. This is the key evidence property. It's not where he lives. It's an investment. Taking it is legally simple. No problems, no constitutional issues. The sheriff can put a notice on the gate, assign a property manager, and put it up for sale in a week. This one is easy to grab, and Letitia James will take it first to show a message. We're serious. Fourth, the bank accounts. This is the finishing move. The New York City sheriff can send what's called a restraining notice to every bank in the state. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citibank, any bank with an account under the name Trump Organization gets a legal order. Freeze the account, send the money to the court. If this happens Monday morning during payroll, thousands of employees at Trump properties across the country don't get paid. Housekeepers at Mar-a-Lago, doormen at Trump Tower, golf course workers, their paychecks bounce. And that's not just a money problem. That's everything breaking down. You can't run a hotel chain when your workers leave because paychecks didn't go through. Within 24 hours, the whole company structure starts falling apart. Fifth, the penthouse. Trump Tower, floors 58 through 66. The gold leaf, the marble, the fancy furniture. This isn't just his home. This is who he is. This is the physical proof of everything he thinks he represents. And here's where it gets truly complicated. The Secret Service controls who enters that building. They control the elevators. They control security, federal law. But the New York sheriff has a state court order to list assets for seizure. So what happens when the sheriff walks up to the doors on Fifth Avenue and a Secret Service agent says you can't enter? Federal versus state law, presidential security versus civil court order enforcement. This is the constitutional problem nobody is ready for. Before I show you who arranged the timing of all this, hit that like button now. The algorithm controls what gets seen, and you control whether this information reaches people. When I reveal the name in 3 minutes, you'll understand the complete picture. Now let me show you where this gets really interesting. Follow the money. Not Trump's money, the money behind the bond. Because the story you're hearing, the story about a random market crash causing a random bond withdrawal, doesn't make sense when you look closely. Global Indemnity Reinsurance Partners, I mentioned the name earlier, Swiss Re, Munich Re, and other smaller companies. Their total risk exposure to Japanese business debt is about $14 billion. When Tokyo collapsed Friday night, their warning systems lit up. That part is real. That part is logical. But here's what Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal aren't reporting. The risk committee that voted to cancel Trump's bond at 3:07 a.m. Tokyo time didn't cancel any other bonds, not a single one. They're still backing appeals for drug companies facing billion-dollar lawsuits. They're still backing construction companies in court over failed projects. The only bond they pulled during a global crisis was Trump's. Why? Let me show you who's on that risk committee. The committee has 7 people. 4 are career insurance professionals, standard backgrounds, but 3 are outside advisors with finance and government experience. One of those advisors is a man named Dr. Richard Castellano. He's currently listed as an independent consultant specializing in political risk assessment for international insurers. That's his official job description. Here's what his description doesn't say. From 2014 to 2017, Dr. Castellano worked as a senior advisor in the Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence at the United States Treasury Department. That office answered directly to the Deputy Secretary. And the Deputy Secretary during those years is now one of the biggest Democratic Party donors in the country. Castellano has given over $400,000 to Democratic candidates and groups since 2018. I'm not guessing. This is Federal Election Commission information, public records. Now, I'm not saying Dr. Castellano personally planned this bond withdrawal as a political attack. I'm saying there's a conflict of interest so obvious that any honest reporter should be asking questions. Did he remove himself from the vote? Was his political history told to the other committee members? Did anyone at the Treasury Department or the Attorney General's office talk to him in the 72 hours before this decision? These aren't wild theories. These are basic investigation questions that no one in mainstream media is asking. But let me address the other side directly, because I know what Trump's supporters are already saying. This is political targeting. This is using courts as weapons. This is Democrats using the legal system to destroy a political enemy. And you know what? I understand why people think that. The timing is suspicious. The connections are real. But here's the legal truth that nobody can ignore. Donald Trump had 2 years to get a different bond. 2 full years from February 2024 until today. He had time to contact every major bonding company in the United States. He had time to sell assets. He had time to work out payment deals with the court. And according to sources familiar with the bond market, at least 6 companies were contacted by Trump's legal team. Every single one said no, not because of politics, because of financial risk. Trump's financial records show over $600 million in debts coming due between now and 2028. His cash on hand is unclear. His properties are losing value in a weak market. From a pure numbers standpoint, bonding his appeal was a risky move. The Japan crash gave the current bondholder a reason to leave, but they were looking for a way out already. So here's where we stand. Suspicious timing? Yes. Political connections worth examining? Absolutely. But also a legitimate financial decision based on real risk analysis? Also, yes. Both things can be true at the same time. And that complexity is exactly what makes this situation so dangerous, because it lets each side choose the story that fits what they already believe. And nobody has to face the uncomfortable truth that this is law, finance, and politics crashing together with no clear heroes. Now, let me show you the chain reactions that are already starting, because the asset seizure isn't the end of this story. It's the beginning of a series of events that could destroy everything Trump has built politically and financially. First reaction, loan defaults. Almost every major commercial property Trump owns has loans against it. That means he borrowed money using those buildings as security. Deutsche Bank, Axos Bank, Ladder Capital. These banks hold about $400 million in loans secured by Trump properties. And hidden in those loan agreements is something called a bad boy guarantee or a judgment default clause. It says if the borrower gets a major civil judgment he can't pay, or if his assets are seized by a court, he's technically in default on the mortgage. Even if Trump is making his monthly payments, even if he's never missed one, the seizure order itself triggers the default. And once a lender declares default, they can accelerate the loan. That means they can demand full payment immediately. Pay us $100 million right now. Trump doesn't have it, so the banks foreclose on top of the state seizure. You end up with the Attorney General trying to take the equity while the bank is trying to take the whole building. It becomes a fight, and in a Japan crash environment where banks are desperately trying to reduce their own risks and protect their finances, they're not going to wait. They'll act fast. Second reaction, the Republican Party split. I've talked to 3 Senate Republican staff members in the last 48 hours, off the record, names not shared. And the word they keep saying is relief. They feel relieved because Trump's legal troubles have been a political weight for years. Every time he faces a new charge, every Republican candidate has to answer questions about it. But they couldn't break away from him because he controls the voter base. The asset seizure changes that calculation. If Trump can't fund his own political operation, if his hotels and properties are being sold off, he loses power. One leaked text message from a senior Republican strategist said, quote, asset seizure equals no campaign infrastructure 2028. This might be our way out. They see a future where Trump is so busy with bankruptcy cases that he can't dominate politics. And quietly, privately, some of them are hoping the seizure works. Third reaction, the Supreme Court. Trump's legal team filed an emergency appeal at 6:13 this evening. They're asking the Supreme Court to issue an immediate stop, blocking the asset seizure until the underlying fraud case is fully finished. Chief Justice John Roberts now faces an impossible choice. If he grants the stop, he protects a former president, but looks like he's putting Trump above the law. If he denies the stop, he allows the humiliation of a major political figure and sets an example that could be used against future presidents. Here's my prediction. They let it happen, not because they want to hurt Trump, but because stepping into a state civil case to protect presidential assets would do more harm to the court's reputation than letting New York proceed. The Supreme Court watches polls. They see the numbers. They might decide Trump is a problem they can no longer afford to protect. Fourth reaction, the 25th Amendment. This is the darkest possibility, but it's being talked about in Washington right now. If Trump becomes so consumed by this financial crisis that he can't focus on running the country, if he spends 18 hours a day on phone calls with lawyers and accountants while the Japan crisis is destroying the global economy, at what point does the cabinet decide he's unable to do his job? The 25th Amendment allows for removal if the vice president and a majority of cabinet members determine the president can't perform his duties. Financial stress can be a form of inability if it stops him from doing his responsibilities. Here's where we are. 3 crises hitting at once. Legal. A sitting president facing asset seizure never happened before in American history. Constitutional. Secret Service authority versus state court orders. Economic. A Japan collapse making a Trump collapse worse, and all of it unfolds in the next 72 hours. Here's what to watch. Sunday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, the Japanese markets open again. If the crash continues, more companies will fail and Trump's options get narrower. Monday, 9 a.m., the receiver appointment hearing in New York. We'll learn who takes control of the Trump organization. Tuesday morning, bank freeze notices hit financial institutions across the state. Wednesday, possible Supreme Court emergency decision. 72 hours from now, we'll know if the empire survives. But here's the question nobody is asking. If they can seize Trump Tower while he's president, what is the constitutional line? Not literally taking the White House, but where does presidential authority end and legal responsibility begin? We're about to find out in real time. Subscribe right now. Turn on all notifications. When the receiver is named Monday, I'll have the full breakdown of who they are and what they do first. Share this video. Send it to anyone who thinks powerful people don't face real consequences. The protection just disappeared. I'll see you in 24 hours when the first domino falls.